Regular City Council meeting. We'll first have an invocation by Council Member Jensen and a pledge by Council Member Wright.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful that we can meet here this evening. We're grateful for the city and the country which we live. We're grateful for the many blessings that thou hast bestowed upon us. We ask this evening as we go over this evening's agenda that we can have thy Spirit to be with us, that decisions will be made, and we will do what's best for our citizens in this fine city. And these things we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. If you'll stand with me and repeat with me the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I need to make an announcement. To comment online during our public hearing, there is a Zoom link on the front page of the Springville City website, which is www.springville.org. You'll need to indicate your name when you log in and turn your camera on so that we can get your comments, and we welcome those that opportunity to hear from you. So if you just let us know that you're on Zoom, we have somebody who will recognize you and give you a chance to make any comments that you'd like to. So, okay, I first of all need a motion to approve the meeting's agenda.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, very good. We'd like to welcome anybody who's here. This is kind of a truth in taxation hearing, opportunity for people to talk in relationship to that if they so choose, or at least to hear the presentation that'll be forthcoming. Just as a sidebar, some of us on Sunday night saw a plume of smoke. Some of you may have seen the plume of smoke, and we're very grateful for the firefighters, so just express appreciation. Chief Clinton and Chief Haight were out there, and they were fighting the fire right along with Troy. So but it's quite fascinating. I had a chance to go see the operations and how it does take place, and it's pretty remarkable. Really, it is the logistics that are involved in it. So I personally just express appreciation to them. So. Okay, very good. So we have a public hearing in relationship to a resolution regarding truth in taxation and adoption of the certified tax rate. So Bruce, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So tonight there's two items on the agenda. The first is a truth in taxation hearing. This is required under state law in the event that the city proposes in its annual budget a revenue amount that is above the certified tax rate calculation that's produced by the county, and that's the case for us here this year. So I'll go through this presentation to explain a little bit about how property taxes work and what exactly we're talking about, and feel free to stop me at any point with any questions that you have. And then you can have the public hearing on the truth and taxation portion of that. The resolution that we need to consider with this portion of the meeting is the adoption of the certified tax rate. And then the second action that needs to take place is, depending on which direction you go with the certified tax rate, is the consideration of the adoption of the final budget. So back in June, you'll recall, we adopted a budget that was effective July 1st. It remains tentative in nature. Tonight would just be the formal action to solidify that budget as the final budget for the remainder of the fiscal year, which runs until June 30th of 2026. Let's see if this is going to let me. There we go. Let me just introduce quickly so that we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. All property owners in the city receive a tax notification from the county. That happens in July. That tax notification itemizes all of the taxing entities in the geographical area that levy a property tax on a property in the city. However, the city is just one portion of that total property tax bill. So you have the Nebo School District, you've got the county, you've got some administrative costs, you've also got special service districts. In the case of Springville, for example, you've got the Central Utah Water Conservancy District. All of those are tax levying entities recognized by the state and are able to levy property tax on property owners in the city. And again, as I mentioned earlier, anytime we propose revenue that's above what was calculated under the certified tax rate by the county, we're required by the state to hold the truth and taxation hearing. To put into perspective sort of the scope of what we're talking about tonight, this chart represents the relative percentages of property tax that are levied against properties in the city by the various taxing entities. So you can see almost 75% of the total property tax bill that any resident or business is going to see is being levied by the Nebo School District. And we're not here tonight to talk about that. They have their own tax hearing if they are raising taxes, and I don't believe this year that they are. You've got Springville City at 11% of the total property tax bill, the county at 9%, and then smaller amounts for the Water Conservancy District and for the administration of the taxing process, and then there's also a small amount for state charter schools. So to put that in perspective, if your individual property tax bill is $1,000 for the year, $740,000 of that is going to the school district, and about 110 of it is going to the city. And we're only talking tonight about that 11% of your property tax bill that's being affected. And in fact, I'll show in just a minute, it's a little bit less than that even.
Bruce, I just want to make a correction on a comment you just made. If you'll go back to that thing. I think it was a slip of tongue. You said 74,000.
$740 on $1,000.
Thank you.
It's math. I'm just the finance guy.
It's just zeros.
Yeah. A little bit about the budget issues that are driving the need for the meeting tonight. So in the general fund, which is the fund of the city's budget that deals with the general governmental services, police, fire, library, parks and rec, those types of things, property tax is the second largest revenue source, with sales tax being the largest, and it represents about $4.5 million or 12% of the total general fund revenues. The issue that's been sort of plaguing us the last few years is just higher than normal inflation, and the city council has taken the position for this will be the third year of proactively raising property tax by an inflationary amount in an effort to keep the buying power of the city whole. That's not a practice that past city councils have necessarily done, and I'll show the implications of that here in just a second. But that's the intent of tonight's meeting. There's one other service level change that was discussed through our strategy meetings and the tentative budget, and that's a small service level change in the police department with the addition of a master officer classification that provides a little bit different progression path for our officers in the police department. So this property tax increase would help fund that. The total amount that we're talking about raising in the general fund with this property tax increase is actually $67,000. This chart shows a little bit about the implications of inflation on the city's ability to continue offering services at the city at the level that we've been accustomed. The part that people have the hardest time sort of grasping, and hopefully I have another chart or two that'll make this more clear, is that by its very nature, the design of the property tax system in the state does not adjust for inflation automatically. The only way that property tax accounts for inflation is for the governing body to proactively change the property tax rate to cover any inflationary pressures that happen. And for many years, in fact, since the inception of the truth and taxation process, the city had never raised property taxes until 2 budgets ago. So as a result, the revenue that we bring in remains flat. And that's because there's an inverse relationship between the value of properties and the rate levied against those properties. So from the city's perspective, we really just budget in dollars, and then the property tax rate is calculated as a function of that dollar amount. And the only new revenue that the city is able to recognize through property taxes if we have growth. So to the extent that someone builds a new house or opens a new business, they begin paying property tax. And so we do collect more property tax, but they're paying at the same rate that everybody else was paying at all along. So the implications of that are that the gray line there at the bottom stays flat over time, and here you can see a 25-year history. But if we overlay inflation on that, that checked area in between is sort of the erosion of the buying power, and we've left about $10 million on the table over the course of 25 years by not increasing the property tax rate to match inflation.
Can I ask a question at this
Yes.
point? So, I don't know if you know this or if you understand the philosophy of previous councils in not doing this over the past 25 years. If so, can you maybe address that a little bit?
There's probably a couple reasons. I'd say the primary reason, well, we've discussed it with I've been at the city for 15 years, and we've discussed it nearly every budget cycle since I've been here at least. For a very long time, inflation hovered at close to zero, and it's just been in the last few years we've had significant inflation. That coupled with growth tends to mask the situation. In other words, we receive new growth dollars, so it looks like we're getting more property tax, but in fact, we're also having to provide additional services for that growth, and so the costs are rising, but we're not adjusting for the inflation. It's been a conscious choice. It's a difficult one because it's a very political decision, and property tax is not a very popular mechanism for taxing residents in the city. But that's been the general, I'd say the biggest driver in that is just the fact that we've had historically very low inflation over the last more than a decade.
Thank you.
This is a pretty busy graph, and I'll try to explain it as clearly as I can. First of all, there are two axes on this one. The one to the left represents the property tax rate, and it's the one that is indexing the two lines, well, the three lines actually, the blue line and the blue line and the gray line at the bottom, which both represent property tax rates. The index to the right, which you can see is in hundreds of thousands of dollars, is indexing the black line, which is home values in Utah. And really all this graph is intended to represent is the fact that there's an inverse relationship between the property tax rate and the value, the taxable value of properties within the city. So as property values go up, the tax rate goes down, and the inverse of that is true. And you can see over time as we've gone through recessionary cycles where property values have gone down, the rate has had to go up. And then in times of inflation where property values have gone up, the rate goes down. All that is in an effort to keep the revenue flat, which is what's guaranteed by state law for taxing entities, is you're guaranteed the same amount of revenue that you had last year unless you budget differently and go through this process. Quickly, how it's calculated is sort of the formulaic version of that. First of all, for residents in the city, the first thing you need to be aware of is that the county assessor comes out and assesses the value of all the properties and then discounts the value of the property by 45%. That's under state law. There's a residential discount. That same discount does not apply for commercial businesses, only on residential. So the formula in words there is on the top. We take the city's budgeted tax revenue, divide it by the total taxable value, which would include 100% of the commercial values plus 55% of the residential values, and the result of that equation is the tax rate. So if the city budgets $100,000 for property tax revenue and the combined taxable value of properties in the city is $100 million, the tax rate would be 0.001 or 0.1%. In the ensuing year, if the city budgets again $100,000 in revenue, but property values go up to $110 million, the property tax rate would go down to 0.0009. So this is sort of the mathematical representation of that equation. This one is kind of showing the same thing, but this is an actual house. So we just went out and sampled an actual property. This is a residential property in Springville, and we just went back through public records and identified what the taxable value of the property was, and then used the historic tax rate and applied it to that taxable value to demonstrate the fact that as the value of the property has gone up over time, which is the blue line, the tax amount collected by the city for that property is flat. And people tend to have a hard time grasping this from the standpoint that property tax is very confusing. And the main thing that makes it confusing is the fact that a resident sees one bill that comes and they sort of gauge whether their property taxes are going up or down based on that bill. But that bill represents, depending on where you live, 4, 5, or 6 separate taxing entities. And on any given year, all or none of them could be raising taxes. Compounded with that is the county assessor's methodology for assessing values. So not everybody's assessment changes at the same rate each year. I think they're becoming more sophisticated with that. Historically, they would only reassess about a third of the city at a time. And so there was always sort of a lag and a disconnect there. I think they've implemented some slightly more complex algorithms that kind of level that out a little bit. But nonetheless, the revenue that the city sees is the same unless we actively change the rate. So for the specific example or specific situation that we're talking about tonight, I'll just run through the calculation quickly to show the impact of the proposed tax increase, which is about 1.5%. And maybe I should back up 2 slides. If it wasn't complicated enough, let me make it just slightly more complicated. This line here shows the blue line represents the general operations portion of the property tax. So you've got your total property tax bill, you've got all the different taxing entities. We're only talking about the city's portion tonight. Within the city's portion, there's actually 2 components of the property tax calculation. One is operations, and the other is debt service. If the city had no debt, the debt service portion or the debt service levy would be 0. We have, however, issued debt back in 2009 for the library and then in 2016 for the CRC. So those amounts are fixed. In other words, the debt service is fixed, and that's being levied on everybody regardless, and we're not changing that tonight. You'll notice from these graphs that the rate is actually going down a little bit, and that's happening for 2 reasons. Number one, property tax values are going up, and so the rate is going to go down. But we've also had growth, so more people are paying into that fixed amount of debt. So everyone's burden is going down as the city grows. But we're not even talking about the debt portion of the property tax calculation for the city, only the blue line, which represents general operations. So if you own a house in Springville and the average residential value according to the county this year is $475,000, the first thing that would happen for a residence is it would be discounted by 45%. So the taxable value of that house is $261,250. If we did not implement the 1.5% tax increase that we're talking about, the rate would be 0.000743. or $194.11, plus the bond fund portion, which is $83.60 for a total property tax bill of $277.71. With the proposed increase, using the same taxable value, the property tax rate would be 0.000759, which would result in a total operations tax bill of $198.29. The debt service portion stays the same at $83.60. So the total tax bill would be $281.89. So the difference or the impact of tonight's action is $4.18 per year, which is about 1.5% for a residential property in the city. This next slide is the exact same exercise with a commercial business. The only difference is there's not the residential exemption on the taxable portion of the value. So it's the exact same calculations. Their impact is roughly twice that at $7.60 per year. This graph just gives you an idea of where we sit relative to our neighbors here in Utah County. Springville here is the gold bar towards the bottom there, or well within the bottom third of cities. Again, this is only the operations portion. You can see ours is relatively low. Cities that have less of a retail base where sales tax is collected tend to have to have higher property tax rates. So there's some value to development on the commercial side as we can offset the burden of property tax with sales tax. But that's why some of the smaller communities like Mapleton and Woodland Hills Vineyard have higher tax rates.
But you've even got some in there that are Spanish and Lehigh, American Fork, that are
Retail
on the
tax.
retail heavy and also,
Still relatively high rates, right?
yeah.
When we combine both the debt and the operations together, this gives us our total tax rate. We move up slightly there because, again, we do have some tax burden. To clarify, as those debts are paid down and eventually retired, that portion of the property tax assessment or levy goes away. So the library will be paid off in 2031, and the CRC will be paid off in 2036, I believe. So by 2036, unless you issue more debt, about almost $1.4 million of the little over $4 million in property tax will go away because we don't have that debt service anymore. At any rate, I think even with the property tax increase, the city's positioned quite competitively with the other cities in the county. Final slide, unless you've got other questions, is just sort of the process. Just to recap, the City Council adopted a tentative budget in the first meeting in May, set a public hearing for consideration of that budget in June as required by state law, and you adopted that tentative budget as effective July 1st until the Truth and Taxation hearing could be held. In July, the county auditor sent out the property valuation and tax change notices. We've advertised consistent with the state law, and then tonight is the public hearing where you consider the adoption of the actual tax rate. So, very high level, the proposal is to increase the operations portion of Springville City's portion of the property tax bill to generate $67,000, which is about 1.5% increase on an average house, which would impact about $4 and change for the average residents in the city. Any other questions for me?
Will you go back to that bar graph comparing the cities? Go back one more. So Springville on the just the operational part of the property tax is very low. If we take Spanish Fork, for example, we're quite a bit lower than Spanish Fork there, but then go to the next slide. We jump up above Spanish Fork there, and you're saying that's because of the library and the CRC.
Right.
Am I correct?
Right.
Okay.
And
I
maybe
just wanted to make sure that that was understood.
And let me clarify that a little bit, because that's a good and an important question. The bonds that the city issued for the library and the CRC are what's called general obligation bonds, which means that whether or not to issue those bonds, whether or not to incur that debt, was put to a vote of the people. So the residents of Springville voted on each of those bond issues. It passed in the affirmative, and thus the debt was incurred, the buildings were built, the services are being provided.
I think, Mike, that might have helped answer the previous question you asked about why didn't we raise them?
Right.
Because we did, but we didn't.
Right.
If that makes
Y-
sense.
Because of that crossover, exactly. Now, if we take the same example, Springville versus Spanish Fork, everybody compares Springville to Spanish Fork anyway on all kinds of different issues. Spanish Fork just constructed a rec center and a huge library. Were those bonded for? Is that gonna adjust where they stand on this graph based on? I know you don't know that, but
Troy probably knows better than me. I think the answer to it is yes, in part they've issued bonds, but the type of bonds they issued are different types of bonds than general obligation bonds, which means they did not put it to a vote of the people. The council voted to issue, I don't know, was it sales tax revenue bonds that they issued?
Yeah,
for?
I'm not positive which one, but I think that's the case, because just a few years ago, Spanish Fork was at the very bottom of the total tax comparison that's on here, so they've moved up. I know they've done some smaller things, like some fire stations, by doing it just through council vote, so I'd assume more of that is the case.
okay.
I think growth funds a lot of stuff over there, too.
Oh, I do too. Absolutely.
Okay, other questions for Bruce? So what you're saying for the average citizen, you're talking $4.18 per year
Correct.
for an increase, and for a business, $7.60. Correct. Okay. Other questions for Bruce?
Not right now, but after whoever here in the public wants to do public comment, I've got some questions that came from the public, and since those people aren't here to ask themselves, is it okay if I touch on those?
And you can do it now if you want to, so what,
It's,
well, I guess it's during public.
I would rather
Yeah,
have,
okay.
I'd rather have the public that's here comment first, and then I'll
Okay,
take
sure,
whatever
sure.
time is.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good, very
Mayor,
good.
Mayor and Council, I'm just gonna click the video button. There's a video camera here so that as we do the public comment portion, if, for those that are
On Zoom.
online, they'll see you, and then, I don't know if anyone's participating or not, but you're live now.
Very good. Okay, I need to open it up for public comment. Anyone who would like to make a public comment, what we'd have you do is come to the rostrum, or excuse me, to the podium, and to state your name and your or not your address, but whether you're a resident of the city, and then take 3 or 4 minutes, and you have an opportunity to be able to say whatever you'd like to say. So feel free to come up. Anyone?
So,
Okay. Okay. If
so what he's suggesting is if they want, they could raise their hand online if you want to let them know that, then.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And those who are online, if you just raise your hand, we have somebody who will see that, and then we'll allow you to also make public comment. Okay, Mike, you're on.
Okay. A comment that was made was our property taxes get raised because we discourage business growth. And I assume that means we don't get the sales tax if we had business growth, which we've already discussed. Does anybody want to address that? That we discourage business growth. I personally don't know how we do that, but if there's a comment about, if anybody knows where that's coming from.
So if I've understood the question is, why do,
Because we have to raise property tax because we don't get the sales tax from business growth.
oh, okay,
That's the way I understood the question.
very good. Troy?
Yeah, I can comment on that, just a procedural question. Are you kind of treating this as a public comment or council discussion?
Kind of both.
So council can close the public hearing portion of this at your convenience.
And then we can have
on
a
that.
discussion.
And I think that the things you're identifying are correct. I mean, obviously, the council will have your own reasons for choosing to raise property taxes or not at the end of the hearing. From a staff perspective, as stated by Director Riddle, the staff is simply recommending that all of our revenue sources except property tax increase by an inflationary amount, and all of our expenses raised by an inflationary amount. So if we want to give an employee a raise, if we need to buy asphalt that costs more, we need the dollars to remain there to do that. And we've suggested that the fairest way to do that is by raising property taxes by inflation, as opposed to artificially raising other fees or fees or taxes by a rate more than that.
Okay.
That help you?
Seeing that there's no public comment, I vote that motion that we close the public hearing.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mike, do you have other questions?
I've got some other questions, but as long as we're in a council discussion, I'd kind of like to hear questions that the other council members have seen or heard or been approached on. And maybe that'll address some of the things I have on my list. Maybe we can make it a little more expedient that way.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone?
The one question that I have seen is that we have raised taxes every year for the past 3 years now. And while they say it's a small amount, that it still affects them. And I understand their point. And the problem that I see is that they just see it as a tax increase rather than even just looking at the amounts. And I get that, but I think the hardest part is that, explaining all of this in a simple manner is not something that I can do. So if this is something that maybe we can post on our website in a clear spot, Truth and Taxation, this PowerPoint, I think it'd be very helpful to explain some of it.
I think that's a good suggestion, Mindy. Appreciate that. Yeah, and I have to kind of speak to this whole thing, and that is, this is the mayor's budget that he submits to the city council, and I just don't know of any other way, because we have a poll. Troy, you can kind of help me with this, but we kind of poll the citizens every 3 years, every 2 years. And it's quite interesting is that they want more, the city to do more and to charge less. Now, if you've been in economics, that just doesn't work. I mean, there's no way that you can provide more services. And the city spends an awful lot of time trying to maintain what's referred to as a service level. So that we don't want to increase service level because it costs more money. We don't want to decrease it. We want to maintain it unless there's some inherent reason to do that. And the city really only has certain avenues to be able to create revenue. And I've always thought that the fairest way is to say, okay, we have inflationary pressures just like everybody else, and that we have to spend expenses that are inflationary. Every year they go up. I wish they didn't. Well, inflation may go up and we're saying, okay, we're going to raise this 1.5%. I think we did this year. I mean, our cost, Brad's not here, but our construction costs have gone up, oh gosh.
Yeah, in years
20%?
past, yeah, definitely
Yeah.
more than 1.5.
So I mean, those are the kind of things that we have to sit and balance and figure out. People say, well, why don't we just make it zero? And then we have to sit and think through, okay, are we gonna lay off a policeman? What are we gonna do to be able to balance the budget? Because we don't have the flexibility to do what the federal government does, thank heavens, as to where you spend more than you take in. So we have to balance those things. The hard part, and I hate budgets, I truly hate budgets, and this is the reason why. You have to project it out a year. Well, I don't know what's going to happen in a year. I can kind of guess, but it's very difficult to budget out a year. And we do the very best that we can. Every government agency does the exact same thing, but it's a very difficult thing to balance. And so if you do, I looked at all, I think there was 89 entities in the state of Utah that agreed to increase their taxes. and I think we were number 4 as far as size. Everyone else was, I think I saw one that was like 64%. You know, and these are just humongous increases in the tax and the property taxes. And I don't know the story behind them, but I personally think that's, if I could be bold and say, that's almost criminal. You know, to where I think people have been asleep at the switch, and I would rather do things gradual over time than all of a sudden not do something for 20 years and then have a 65% tax increase in order to balance the budget. And it's just a philosophy of mine. So, I mean, I'll take the arrows for suggesting this to the council. The council, again, votes on it, and they have their own opinions, and we've had very good discussions about this sort of thing, haven't we, Craig? And you know, so it's just easier to do gradually over time than all of a sudden having a huge tax increase, and everybody gets upset over it. So anyway.
We're voting ourselves a tax increase, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
We're not trying to.
We're not immune.
We're not trying to enrich ourselves by raising property taxes.
Right.
So, yeah. Go ahead, Craig.
No, the thing, and we're not to debate it now, but I've been somewhat vocal about my dislike of property tax, but this isn't the forum that we debate that, because we have a property tax. I think all the cities in the state have a property tax. It is a political monster that we can't fix overnight, but I do believe that as a city we're very to Mayor Packard's point, we're very open and forthright. We have a budget to balance, or a balanced budget, meaning an expand. We're running a business
Balance our
here,
budget,
and we have to figure out how we pay for stuff. And unfortunately, one of those line items is property tax. I wish it didn't exist. I wish we could do it some other way, and maybe in some utopia environment that will happen, because it's not necessarily the fairest tax. Because there's a lot of people that live in our city that don't have property, so they don't pay tax. So that does get burdened by other people. But nonetheless, I think we've done a great job. I've lost sleep over it because I'm like, this is a lot of stress for $67,000. You guys realize if we were just to say, hey, let's just bump our electrical up this much, we would have made that same revenue. But this is actually probably more ethical, if you will, because we balance it across many income sources, if you will. So I'll be all right with it, although I will also say that I'm not a fan of property tax.
Well, I don't think
That's me.
I don't think anybody's a fan of property
Yeah.
tax. Nobody likes taxes at all.
Right.
Any kind of
Well,
tax.
there's others that are, I mean, sales tax, that's pretty fair because everybody buys stuff.
But to the mayor's point, people in the city want services that have to be paid for one way or the other.
But are all of those people that want those services property owners? I mean, if you've got a bunch of apartments and they want services and they're not paying property tax,
But in some ways they
but
are.
again, we're not
It
gonna
gets
debate.
folded into their
They
rent
are.
or
It's into
whatever,
their
and
rent. But
so.
But can you see the discussions that we have had over this? And it's a healthy discussion, and we have differences of opinion, and it's okay.
it's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Well, and in regard to, I wish there was another way. You know, we do offset a lot of our costs through the sales tax. That's a big chunk of our income, our revenue. And I feel like, there's always rumors swirling about some business that Springville did or didn't miss out on. But we actually do a really good job attracting businesses, I think, to Springville. And I talked to other council members, other staff members from other cities, and I say, sometimes I hear this, Springville is not friendly to business.
work with.
That's what I hear from other council members in other cities too. And I feel like starting a business, it's a difficult thing, kind of anywhere. And I think we have staff members who do a really good job making that as easy as possible and helping guide people through that process. And obviously, we're always trying to do a lot better, but I think we do a great job. And we have some new businesses coming that bring a lot of revenue. We have sold some property recently. Even buying up and selling property helps offset some of our operational costs. In some ways, that goes into the general fund. So we make some wise investments and then try to protect those over the long term to maximize the citizens' investment. And then if I can also say another thing, one of the things I hear a lot online is, well, why doesn't the city just become more efficient? And we have phenomenal staff members who are always trying to get the most out of every single tax dollar. I'm not saying that we're always 100% efficient, because our staff members are always trying to be more and more and more efficient. And we have a new budgeting method that we've used the last, has it been 2 or is this the 3rd year? This is the 3rd year now, when department heads and their supervisors in each department are more directly responsible for the budgets in their department. And it means that they are paying attention to every single dollar that they are spending, and they're coming up with new creative ways to save the citizen taxpayer dollars. For example, just off the top of my head, I know in the power department, we had one of our longtime employees who retired after many years of faithful service. And rather than immediately hiring and spending those salary and benefit dollars, the staff members in the power department have kind of stepped up and decided, hey, can we make this department function just as well, if not better, by redistributing some of these responsibilities? And that's just one example, but there's, in every department, there's examples like that. And so I want to commend our staff members for doing their very best to safeguard our taxpayer dollars.
And not only does our staff do a great job tightening the belt and using the maximum, or wringing out the maximum that they can with the budgets they have, but they're also excellent grant writers. And so those grants that come in save taxpayers a ton of money. You're with utilities, you understand that. I'm with Parks and Rec. I understand completely how our Parks and Rec department has applied for and received huge grants. The bike park was paid in a lot of the bike park, for example, was paid with grant money from the county and the state, along with impact fees, very, very few direct tax dollars. And that just goes on and on. I mean, there's grants, the police department writes grants. All of our staff people write grants and get a lot of money to save those tax dollars. So we are doing the best we can do to save those tax dollars. We understand how important they are to the citizens. We're citizens, we get it, it's our money too, and we just need to be cognizant of that, as well as the rest of the citizenry. We're a community and we need to provide the services, and this is how we do it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. And I was going to say this after, but I'll say it now. If you want to be a part of these discussions, they start in January, and we work for 3 or 4 months having these discussions about what we're going to do next year. So look for opportunities. If these are open meetings, you can come. You can have an opportunity to say something to us before, during, and after, and we welcome it. We really do. We're trying our best to do what we can for the citizens. So,
is there a way that we can post on the website or our social media channels when those budget meetings are? I think that would be very helpful, so that people don't have to dig for them. I mean, it can be on the homepage of the website. It can go out with social media blasts so that people understand where those are and can be involved in it. It'd be very helpful to everybody if they understood the processes that have to go through. So if we can do that, that'd be great.
Of course, they are already. Anybody
yeah.
can actually sign up and have every agenda sent to them, but we'll take note and we can highlight specifically budget meetings as a call out separate from the other business that you're doing routinely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve Resolution 2025-27, adopting the certified tax rate of .00107.9, comprised of a tax rate of .0000759 for general operations of the city and a tax rate of .00320 for interest and sinking fund bond purposes, to be levied on all taxable property taxes within the corporate limits of Springville City in order to support the tax revenue in the general fund and debt service fund.
Okay, I have a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, it's a roll call vote. Craig?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Logan?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Hey, Bruce?
Mayor, I'm happy to present the budget again, if you would like that
We're just,
for tonight.
well, we did it,
Just make a motion.
The public hearing for the budget was held in June.
correct?
People had an opportunity to comment then. You adopted the budget in tentative form
Tentatively.
effective. Nothing has changed since the June meeting. You are required under state law to adopt a final budget. That's what this item is, so.
So council, are you okay with moving ahead with approval?
Yeah, we've had the presentation.
Okay, very good. I'll entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution, excuse me. Resolution number 2025-28, adopting a final budget for Springville City Corporation in the amount of $116,371,444 for expenditures and transfers in the 2026 fiscal year ending June 30th, 2026.
Okay, I have a motion.
I will second that.
Okay, a roll call vote. Logan?
Yes.
Craig?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Very good. Any other items that we need to discuss?
We got a meeting tomorrow?
1 o'clock?
Meeting tomorrow at 1.
And I assume that there is Zoom options to do that? For the council members?
I'll make it back. I'm pretty happy. It makes me come home. It's good.
Logan, are you okay with meeting in person? Mindy?
I would prefer Zoom,
You
please.
prefer Zoom? Okay, okay.
Also, Councilmember Smith wants to remotely come in.
Oh, so there's two.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Okay, I'll entertain a motion then for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you.